Civic. This program on matters of public importance brings you information and discussions on issues and matters that have concerned you, the Guyanese public, every Thursday between 12:30 and 1:30, right here on Channel 6. And as usual, before we get into the meat of the program, I remind you the numbers that you can use to call in the program: 225-0010 and 225-0008. As always, I always remind you that the Office of the Leader of the Opposition is open at 304 Church Street between New Garden and Peterborough Streets in Queenstown, opposite the Border Cricket Ground. And we're open Monday to Friday, daily from 9 to 5, and half day on Saturdays. And you're free and welcome to walk in, to ask for an appointment, or to call at the switchboard 225-3432. And some of you may be familiar with Freedom Radio, which we broadcast on as well on FM 91.1 Demerara, 90.5 Berbice, and 90.7 Essequibo. And of course, you can access The Mirror, the oldest newspaper in Guyana and the Caribbean region, which started in 1961. And this can be available online at www.facebook.com/Weekend Mirror News, one word. I hope that all Guyanese enjoyed Emancipation Day celebrations last Thursday. As you know, we don't broadcast our program on public holidays. Today is 230 days, my friends, since the passage of the no confidence motion on December 21st, 2018. 140 days since March the 21st, 2019, when elections were due according to Article 106.6 and 106.7. And 7 weeks since the Caribbean Court of Justice ruled on June the 18th that the no confidence motion was valid, the motion was passed, and the elections which were paused by the government going to the courts in January 2019 was lifted on June the 18th, meaning elections must be held within 3 months. And as you know, the President has not acted to implement these rulings and to call elections. On previous programs, we went through the Caribbean Court of Justice June 18th ruling and the consequential orders of July 12, 2019. And unfortunately, we have to keep repeating it because the government defies these all the time and have been doing that since June the 18th. The July 12, 2019, on July 12th, 2019 CCJ consequential orders stated that the same as June the 18th ruling, but in even clearer terms, that elections must be held 3 months after the June 18th ruling, or by extension of the National Assembly by 2/3 vote of all elected members. The CCJ states, upon the passage of this motion of no confidence in the government, the clear provisions of Article 106 immediately become engaged. Well, the government has a problem with interpreting the word immediately. We examined the President's addresses, remember, to the nation March the 15th, June the 18th, and June the 12th, which all illustrated how his positions did not change despite the rulings of the local court and the Caribbean Court of Justice. In a nutshell, he adamantly wants house-to-house registration first, then elections sometime after the first quarter of 2020. Why does he want that? The whole of Guyana knows the reason: to stay in power as long as possible, even though he lost the mandate to govern both at the local government elections, which represents 90% of the voters in Guyana, and in the National Assembly. So he lost on two grounds on which responsible government and responsive government are based on, the two pillars. One is that you have the mandate from the electorate and you have the confidence of the legislature. The government has lost both, and yet it continues to dig its heel in and disobey the Constitution of our country. These addresses, as I pointed out before, are proof of the President's defiance of the Constitution and the Caribbean Court of Justice rulings. These are only a few examples of the President operating in bad faith, something that the CCJ warned about. In addition, the CCJ in its July 12, 2019 consequential orders went to pains to ensure there was clarity on key issues in its June 12th ruling with regards to 1, general regional elections within 3 months of June the 18th, 2019 ruling, 2, the status of a resigned president and cabinet, and 3, a caretaker government pending elections. And of course 4, the role of the General Guyana Elections Commission, its role and responsibilities. Thus the court, while not naming a date for elections, was unambiguous that elections must be held within 3 months of June 18, 2019, in accordance with Article 106. Here is what the CCJ says, and in one section, and I'm repeating it because I think it is very, very important. After listening to some of the government and Basil Williams, the Attorney General, and even the President's gymnastics and semantics, they are being obtuse and just digging their heels in and holding on to power. Here's what the CCJ says, quote, "The judiciary interprets the Constitution, but as we intimated in our earlier judgment, these particular provisions, Article 106.6 and 7, require no gloss on the part of the court in order to render them intelligible and workable." That means that they didn't have to go to great efforts to interpret it when they say no gloss. In other words, the language is clear. Goes on to say now, quote, "Their meaning is clear, and it is the responsibility of the constitutional actors in Guyana to honor them. Upon the passage of a vote of no confidence, the article requires the resignation of the cabinet, including the president. The article goes on to state, among other things, that notwithstanding such resignation, the government shall remain in office and an election shall be held within 3 months or such longer period as the National Assembly shall, by resolution, supported by not less than 2/3 of the National Assembly, of the votes of all the elected members of the National Assembly, determine." It goes on to say, quote, "The Guyana Elections Commission has a responsibility to conduct that election, and GCOM too must abide by the provisions of the Constitution," that is Article 106.6 and 106.7. The CCJ said unequivocally that elections are due in 3 months, in accordance with Article 106. The CCJ stated specifically that the time started on June the 18th, 2019, when the ruling was made. And although the court rightfully stated that it could not set an actual date for elections, it was unambiguously clear that whatever date is chosen, it must be within the 3 months deadline. Since the CCJ ruling, the President has not abided with the court and continues to violate the Constitution. Let me explain something to our viewers. Article 106 and 106.7 stated that the President shall resign on the passage of a no confidence motion. The government and Basil Williams, the Attorney General, then says the CCJ ruling never said that the President and Cabinet had to resign. And they're using the word government, that the President and government continue in office until elections. Well, let's clarify this issue. It's a combination of law and political science, and obviously Mr. Williams has difficulties with both. The President in Guyana is both the head of state and the head of government. Unlike in some other Caribbean countries, where you have a head of state who is, say, the President or the Governor General, and the Prime Minister, who is the head of government. In Guyana, we have an executive president, and the president is both the head of state and the head of government. The Constitution, so therefore the president, representing the head of state, and cabinet, which represents the executive, are expected to be resigned by Article 106.6 and 106.7 as head of state and head of the executive branch of the government. Remember, we've talked about this before. Government is comprised of 3 branches. There are 3 branches of government: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. So what Article 106 is talking about is that the President Cabinet, that is the executive branch, when there's a no confidence motion, stands resigned, must resign. Clear? The President, as head of government now, continues with the government. And what is the government outside of the executive? It is the other branches of government: ministries, state corporations, constitutional bodies, the judiciary. They continue to have a life until elections are held. So the President continues as the head of government. But as head of state and executive, he is he is supposed to resign according to the Constitution. So government and executive are not the same thing, and cabinet and government are not the same thing. Cabinet represents the executive. The president represents the executive, but the president also, according to our Constitution, is also the head of government. So when it says the president, including the cabinet, including the president, must resign, it is talking about the branch of the government where it is the executive must resign. So the ministers and so on, everybody's supposed to resign. What remains is government, with the president as the head of government remaining in office until elections. So the ministries and the PSs and the regions and local government and social services and so on, and the army and the police continue to work, and they continue to get their salaries. That is an important issue which the government is trying to fudge all the time. So the government has not resigned, and as you know, as you know, that the government has not resigned up to today, up to last night. The Ministry of the Presidency announced that the government, the president and the cabinet will not resign. Furthermore, the president sent a letter to the leading opposition stating that the government, the president and the cabinet will not resign. And in relation, this was a response to the letter the leading opposition sent on July 20th, calling on the president to have the cabinet and himself resigned, to form a caretaker government as defined by the Caribbean Court of Justice with limited powers, and to dissolve Parliament and call elections. The president has responded and basically said no to everything. The president has not accepted that it was in a caretaker mode, as required by the CCJ on June the 18th until July the 13th. And in its public statement on that day, it declared that although in caretaker mode, the government continues to exercise full powers to make election decisions, make policies, and grant contracts and agreements as per norm. Again, as of yesterday, the government continues to issue large contracts and behave as if it is business as usual. So again, this is a second major area of the CCJ ruling that the government is thumbing their nose at. Thirdly, the president has not even acknowledged the court's ruling of June 18th and July 12th that elections must be held within 3 months, and insists that elections will be held after a new house-to-house registration, a tune he's been singing since March 2019, long before the CCJ's ruling, and one which he has not changed since his rulings. Yesterday we heard from the Director General Harman that there was some talk elections could be called in elections 6 months past the June 18th CCJ ruling. Of course, today the President met with the Guyana Elections Commission. Was there anything change? Was there any change? Did the President shift his position anyway to show that he is willing to comply with the Constitution and the CCJ rulings? Well, let me read what he did say at the press conference held afterwards. He was asked the question, will you accept the High Court ruling on the house-to-house challenge? This is a case that's going on, and we will have the judgment on, I believe, the 14th. His comments are the following. He says the following: we are ready to pursue any legal action that we feel will lead to a favorable outcome to have credible elections in Guyana. Our concern is with credible elections. We have said over and over again that if the list is flawed, it must be corrected. It is for the Commission to say how it will be corrected. As leader of the PNCR, as chairman of APNU, as president of Guyana, we're interested in credible elections. This has been said repeatedly. How do you interpret that, my friends? There's only one way to interpret it, and that is that the president continues to adamantly hold that he has to have house-to-house elections, house-to-house registration, and that If the court does not rule in his favor, he will take the matter, legal action, all the way through back to the CCJ, basically. So this is the conundrum that the president has put our beloved country into. Focus on credible elections. I'm going to discuss that issue of credible elections a little more. I'm going to give you some maths to do today. So that's where we're at right now, at this moment, within the last hour. This is what the president said after he had the meeting with the GCOM. 10 o'clock this morning. It was a short meeting. They had a press conference after. This is what the president says. Of course, he says before that we're not in the business of giving directions to the commission, and the chairman will advise on the readiness to hold elections. We're not proposing anything. But of course, the issue is credible elections. And so, are these issues that I've been documenting to you over the weeks, as they unfold, week by week, day by day, are these more examples not only of the president's bad faith, actions of bad faith, but also the president's defiance of the Constitution, the supreme law of our country? That is the supreme law of our country. You know, so serious is this development that it will mean, what the government is doing will mean that the government will be illegal by September 18th while the House is going on. And again, we shall be in a constitutional crisis. And as the lawyers and thinkers of our society have said, we will be uncharted waters. There's nothing in our Constitution, nothing in our laws that guide us on what the devil you do after that. All of the president and the APNU government and GCOM efforts thus far are to extend the life of an illegal government as long as possible into 2020. And will Mr. Granger's government continue as it is now to hold on to power with its fingernails? Will Granger go down in the history as one of the first leaders in a parliamentary democracy to defy a no-confidence motion legitimately passed and refuse to hold elections within the required time frame? Is he prepared to put this country again into a constitutional crisis, as happened on March 21st, when for 16 hours our government was illegal? Will Guyana be the first English-speaking CARICOM country in 2019 since Grenada's dictator, Prime Minister Gary, in the 1970s to defy constitutional rule? For those who are not young enough, old enough, this is what we all fought for. This is what led to the Maurice Bishop Revolution, to remove Gary, who was a dictator, who violated constitutional rule in Grenada. And since then, in the English-speaking Caribbean, we have had no such comparison, other than when Burnham was around in pre-92 Guyana. And now, a full circle, Guyana will again be one of those countries that are pariah states. We're on the verge of another constitutional crisis, and on the edge of a dictatorship only the people can stop this move by this caretaker government, which is on borrowed time. It is only the people that can stop it. We've spoken enough about the CCJ and the Constitution. Let's do some maths lessons today. The PNC, as we know, has hegemonic control of the APNU-AFC coalition. The other parties don't really count. WPA and what is the one that Keith Scott leads, and etc. But the PNC as a party has historically had a problem with mathematics. And let me just remind the younger generation of some of the problems we've had with mathematics. In the general elections of 1968, 1973, and 1985, the PNC claimed over 60% of the votes when everyone knew that these elections were rigged. And they were documented Granada television programs, election reports, documents produced by persons who were denied the right to vote. Everyone knew that the elections were rigged. The 1978 referendum, which was boycotted most tellingly exposed the PNC with empty streets and empty polling stations. Nevertheless, the PNC recorded 80% turnout at the polls and unabashedly gave themselves 2 more years in office to introduce a new constitution. More recently, the PNC-led government went all the way to the Caribbean Court of Justice to prove that 34 is the majority of 65 elected members of the National Assembly. Their mathematical gymnastics failed, and Guyana was made a laughing stock in the entire Caribbean region. More recently, no less than the president stated that there were 200,000, I'm quoting him, quote, 200,000 incorrect entries on the voters list. The list, he said, quote, was corrupted and needed to be sanitized, end quote. Hence the need for a new national house-to-house registration and a new national ID card. No evidence or even anecdotal stories, to quote Minister Felix, with regard to the Haitian smuggling ring, were tended to enlighten the population. I will return to the issue of human smuggling ring and the Haitians further down the program. Where did this figure of 200,000 come from? How did the president come up with this figure? No one knows, but again, the PNC, like a magician with his magic wand, conjured up 200,000. Another example of PNC maths at work. The fact that the chief elections officer of the GCOM, when questioned by the media recently, referenced this astounding figure of 200,000, disavowed that he had advised President Granger that the list was bloated with approximately 200,000 extra names. Lowenfield cited that the 200,000 figure is speculative. Understandable, maybe, as how could he, Lowenfield, describe the voters list he oversaw for the 2015 general elections, as well as the voters list for 2016 and 2018 local government elections, as bloated? He went on to say bloated, he admitted, was not a word he would affix to it, meaning the voters list. Of course, only a few weeks before, he described the same list as clean and credible. If one takes the PNC maths seriously, then let's examine this proposition by the president. The list of Guyanese registered for the last general and regional elections in 2015 was 570,708, 570,708. This election put the PNC-led APNU AFC coalition in office, a list that he did not complain about then, remember? If you reduce the list of 570,708 by Granger's 200,000, you end up with 370,708 voters. This 370,708 is less than the number of people who actually voted at the 2015 general regional elections. A total of 412,012 Guyanese voted at the 2015 elections. So in other words, take the 200,000, you have less people voting in the whatever elections coming up than what voted in 2015. The 2018 voters list has 633,155 eligible voters. If one subtracts Mr. Granger's 200,000, there are 433,155 voters left on the list, a mere 21,143 voters more than in 2015. So again, Mr. Granger's maths. So I ask you, is this how the PNC intends to disenfranchise thousands of eligible voters presently on the voters' lists? There is no doubt in my mind that this is the plan. This is the plan. Now we're being inundated with a numbers game with the house-to-house registration. And again, like the man with the chick-chick board on the street, on the corner of the street, the aim is to deliberately confuse and distract the audience. First, we have the announcement by GCOM that 20,000 people registered at the end of day 2, July 22nd, 2019. Then GCOM announced on July 31st, 2019, that 69,547 were registered in the first 11 days. Next, the Department of Information on August the 4th announced that 108,814 were registered on August the 2nd, 2019. When the PRO of GCOM was asked to verify this, she is quoted in the media as saying that, well, as of the weekend, August 4th, it was 70,000, so it should be around 100,000. Well, today's newspaper says that the figure is now over 118,000 people have so far been registered. This is a GCOM, at least what the press reported, is a GCOM report. Clearly the race is on. The GCOM Secretariat is rushing to prove that this exercise can be done in 3 months, by October 20th, 2019. However, no one believes that 108,814 persons, or the latest data today of 118,000, over the age of 14 have been so far registered. The fact that GCOM has not provided any data on the numbers registered by region or by the 29 registration offices only increases the suspicion. The fact that the CEO issued instructions to the registration officers to not give the permanent PPPC scrutineers access to that information is also suspect. The 2008 National House-to-House registration exercise was done in 6 months, January 7th, 2008 to July 4th, 2008. 430,745 persons were registered 14 years old and above. The report shows that 33,000 people were not registered as they did not have birth certificates at that time. General regional elections were held in 2011, 3 years after that, and after at least 4 continuous registration cycles and a claims and objection period. In the 2008 House-to-House registration exercise, an average of 2,393 persons were registered per day. In 2019, if we're using the figure of 108,814, GCOM would have had us believe that 7,254 persons are registered on an average day in the first 15 days. GCOM knows that this is not accurate. Readers may need to be reminded that on June 14, 2007, the government of Guyana, led by President Jagdeo, GCOM, and all the existing parliamentary political parties agreed to the conduct of the 2008 House-to-House registration. The agreement, which was signed by the government, PPPC, PNC, RIG, remember it was PNC Reform, I've forgotten what IG stands for, AFC, GAP-ROAR, and the United Force, stated as follows, quote, that prior to the holding of the forthcoming local government elections, a national 2007 House-to-House registration of all eligible registrants aged 14 years and over will be undertaken by GCOM, and this will constitute the country's new National Register of Registrants, the NRR. That all of the above parties agree that the procedure of continuous registration will thereafter be used by the Guyana Elections Commission to update the NRR on an ongoing basis to ensure that a voters list could be readily extracted for the holding of future elections, end quote. This was the memorandum of agreement signed by all these parties, witnessed by the entire diplomatic corps at that time, as well as represented the civil society, that is, business, labor, etc. The 2008 House-to-House registration exercise was called the mother of all registrations. And if my memory is right, that name was given to it by no other than the then leader of the opposition, Mr. Robert Corbyn, but I could stand corrected. This mother of all registrations would provide a new National Register of Registrants database and ensure that GCOM, with statutory continuous registration cycles, would be in a state of readiness to hold elections at any time. Over the last 8 months, GCOM has refused to prepare for elections. This is the first time that elections have not been held within 90 days as required by the Constitution. In actual fact, it is GCOM during this period that has been an integral part of the subversion of constitutional rule in our country. So when the President talks about the independence of GCOM, at least in the last 8 months, and we hope with the new chairman that her being called an Iron Lady, she will live up to that reputation of being an Iron Lady. How can GCOM complete this exercise in half the time it took to do so in the 2008 registration, and with a larger population base now? This becomes even more dubious when one remembers what Vincent Alexander, one of the 3 government-appointed members of GCOM, told the media on February the 11th, 2019. February the 11th, remember. That, quote, July 2019 and February 2020 are the 2 dates commissioners of the GCOM will consider for the hosting of general and regional elections, end quote. According to Alexander, quote, if claims and objections begin soon, then you can host elections in July. If house-to-house registration is done, then elections would be February 2020. Even Attorney Marcus, senior counsel for GCOM, told the Caribbean Court of Justice on July 1st, 2019, that the house-to-house registration would end on December 25th, 2019. What made GCOM in June this year half the time for the house-to-house exercise, when it had projected in its own work program dated February 25th, 2019, 2 months after the no-conference motion, that the house-to-house exercise would take from June 2nd to December 18th, 2019, a total of 199 days, or 6 months and 16 days. Now that the exercise has started 1 month and 18 days later, means that the date would most likely be pushed to early February 2020. Add to that the other consequential processes, such as data verification, cross-matching of fingerprints, the production of a preliminary voters list, then a claims and objection period, followed by the production of the official list of electors, and you could very well be holding elections well into mid-2020. This is a travesty unheard of in any democratic or democratic aspiring nation. But no matter how GCOM rushes, how it skips people's houses and threatens people with being locked up if they do not register, GCOM cannot escape the timeline of Article 1067 of the Guyana Constitution and the CCJ June 18th ruling and July 12th consequential orders. Make no bones about it, my dear viewers. September 18, 2019 will come, and the government will be illegal. It cannot remain in office in defiance of the Constitution and the Caribbean Court of Justice. But we mustn't be feeling helpless. There are 2 options that can prevent our country, Guyana, from becoming a pariah state. First, if the court rules on August 14, 2019, that the house-to-house exercise must be halted, elections preparations start immediately, and elections be held as close as possible to the September 18th deadline. So that's one option. 2, the Guyana Elections Commission decides to halt the house-to-house exercise by mid-August. Within 10 days commence a 3-week period of claims and objection. Using the November 2018 voters list, elections could be held as early as mid-October. Please note that the ruling of the CCJ, Chief Justice, is the day before the first formal meeting of GCOM with its new chairman since its last meeting in May. Both options would knowingly pass the September 18 deadline, but not too distant. However, it is highly unlikely that the great caretaker government will deviate from its plan to remain in office for another year following the no-confidence motion. The PNC-led APNU government is obsessed, and has been since 2015, when they won with only a hairbreadth of 4,000 odd votes, less than 1% difference between the PBPC and the APNU AFC. And this was despite the largest ever turnout of their supporters. This preoccupation has become more entrenched after their loss at the 2016 local government elections, and even more worrying after the 2018 local government elections, when it lost its mandate to government. The PNC objective is to ensure that the voters list guarantees their victory, or as they call it, a credible election, Please remember what I just quoted for you from the President's press conference, the focus on the government. Our concern, I repeat what the President said only an hour or two ago. Our concern is with credible elections. We have said over and over again that if the list is flawed, it must be corrected. It is for the Commission to say how it will be corrected. So again, it is saying to the government, to the GCOM, that really what it wants, a list that is credible. It means a list that will ensure their victory. This can only be done with padding the list with people not eligible to vote, to be voters, and disenfranchising thousands who are entitled to vote. And the House exercise allows for these objectives to be met. The PNC predictably is also counting on threats of violence, veiled and overt, by its leaders, as, for example, the other night with Mr. Basil Williams at the American Chamber of Commerce panel discussion. We as a people, as Guyanese, have experienced all of this before. We've been there before, and we never wanted to go back. But it seems as if we're being forced to go back. In 2015, when the PPPC was calling on GCOM and Dr. Serge Bally as the chairman to do a recount, the APNU AFC coalition threatened that results had to be announced urgently or they would burn down Georgetown. GCOM capitulated. The PNC once again is counting on the issue of fear and threats, as it did in the 1992, 1997, 2001, 2006, 2011, and 2015 elections to suppress their opponents and intimidate the middle roaders and sections of the middle class, foreign investors, and the international community into compliance. But once again, as I said, PNC always has a problem with maths. June 18 plus 3 months equals September the 18th, 2019. The government is illegal. House registration plus 3 months equals a flawed list. The government is illegal. Elections in December, the government is illegal. 633, 155 voters plus claims and objections equals APNU AFC out of government. Whichever way it chooses, the APNU AFC coalition caretaker government's days are numbered. This is no time to sit on the fence. Are you on the side of constitutional rule and democracy or creeping dictatorship? Are you as Guyanese, are we as Guyanese going to sit there and allow this to happen in our country and sit there and fold our hands and allow the government and the president and the APNU AFC to get away with this violation of our constitutional rule and democracy in our country? You know, I promised I would come to the Haitian issues, and I want to bring this into the context of what we're talking about. The whole issue started, as you may recall, with the first exposure by the leader opposition in early 2018. The Parliamentary Committee, Sectoral Committee on Foreign Relations, between February to August 2018, raised the issue of Venezuelans, particularly Guyanese Venezuelans returning home and what facilities the government was giving to assist them. Venezuelan migrants who were coming here because of what was happening in Venezuela, and the upsurge in Haitians. It is the leading opposition who spoke about the preferential treatment of the Haitians on the air side at Chetty Jagan International Airport. It took from February to August the 9th, 2018, a year ago, for Mr. Felix to come before the commission, the sectoral committee. And of course, his views, what he said then, is the same he's saying now, a year later, despite more information, even if he doesn't want to call it evidence, that there is a human trafficking, a human smuggling operation involving Haitians and Cubans and maybe others in our country. But the main victims are the Haitians. We have talked over and over about this issue. Minister Felix is trying to sidestep this issue that there is a human smuggling operation in Guyana with links to several other countries, and he seems to be quite happy to ignore it and cast all sorts of inconsequential and irrelevant matters with regard to a situation in which people in key positions are profiting from and where humans are being exploited and suffering. We have to go back to the press conference today with the president, where a question was asked with regard to the Haitians. His comment: we want to protect the integrity of our sovereignty. We don't want to be used as a conduit for illegal immigration. We always have thousands of Venezuelan migrants in the country. We're very concerned about that. We know about the influx of Cubans. Suddenly there seems to be concerns about the influx of Haitians. But my understanding is that they are not going to be involved in influencing the elections in Guyana, not the Cubans, nor the Venezuelans. Let's step back a bit. The People's Progressive Party has historically stood on the side of the Haitian people in their long struggles to restore democracy through the dark days of Papa Doc and Baby Doc. And we have had protests, demonstrations, written letters, petitions to stand up for a democratic Haiti and the right of the Haitian people to choose their government and to be able to have a right on how their country is developed. In government, the PPPC assisted Haitians to come here and to live and work here, when other Caribbean countries were not doing so. In the earthquake which devastated Haiti, and from which it has still not recovered, the People's Progressive Party's government sent the largest financial and material support per capita in the world to Haiti, approximately 10 million US. So what is Felix referring to as race and nationality? This is a smokescreen to elicit a knee-jerk reaction from his supporters and APNU and AFC supporters. It is Felix, unlike what he's saying now about the Asians coming in legally and leaving illegally, and that it's all right, that they're going in the diaspora to meet their family across the border in Brazil. It's fine. But I want to remind you, that's what he's saying now. In 2016, he was summoned before the Parliamentary Sectoral Committee on Foreign Relations to answer a number of issues, including the reason why his ministry, which includes, as you know, immigration and citizenship, had refused entry for 168 CARICOM nationals. None were Haitians. The grounds upon which they were turned back and refused entry, this is refused entry at CGIA, CARICOM nationals with CARICOM passports were refused entry, 168 in 2016. As I said, none were Haitians. What were the grounds? He stated insufficient funds. It was pointed out by in the Parliamentary Sectoral Committee that the Immigration Act doesn't talk about insufficient funds as a reason to refuse entry to anybody. It talks about insufficient means to be able to afford themselves their care and sustenance while in Guyana. He was asked to ensure that this ad hoc approach of turning CARICOM nationals, and he was reminded about the case of the Jamaican woman which had just been finalized and the ruling given by the Caribbean Court of Justice in regards to CARICOM nationals. So that's what he did in 2016. And that is where we began to see, by 2017, by 2018, the beginning of the upsurge in the Haitians coming to Guyana, in particular as a country. And where the numbers of those entering and those leaving left a huge mystery of where were these people. Just like with the Cubans, thousands and thousands who cannot be accounted for. We must be concerned if people are disappearing. We're a country that had Jonestown, where 900 people were killed in a massacre, and was the largest civilian massacre in the world until the World Trade Center was hit on September 11, 2011. This is Felix in 2016 talking about turning back CARICOM nationals. And long before the immigration order was given in October last year for Haitians to come in the country with 6 months, we had seen the figures going up 2017, 2018. We have to remind you too about in June this year, Mr. Felix, through the DPI, Department of Public Information, gives a statement warning Surinamese travelers against flouting the immigration laws. This is June the 10th, 2019. Suriname is part of CARICOM, isn't it? He says, and I'm quoting from it, Minister Felix is urging members of the public traveling to and from Suriname through East Berbice Quarantine, Region 6, that pursuant to Section 10.3 and Section 7.2 of the Immigration Act, Chapter 1402, persons entering and leaving Guyana are obligated to present themselves to immigration offices for processing. He goes on, persons arriving must first ensure that they check with immigration on departing Suriname and report to the immigration on arrival in Guyana. Failure to do so, if caught, will expose you to prosecution. He goes on to quote from the same act in regards to people who are entering and leaving illegally. Certainly, this is June 2019. The fact that he admits in public in the last few weeks that yes, the Haitians are coming in legally and they're exiting. He admits they're exiting illegally from Guyana. So why is it that people coming in from Suriname, to and from Suriname, have to abide by the immigration laws? But he has decided that the immigration laws don't apply to another group of people. And my view about this is that Mr. Felix has another agenda, and so does his government. If the Mr. Felix, as the mouthpiece of this government on immigration, sees nothing wrong with people being sneaked across the Guyana border, Brazil border illegally, then something's wrong. We know, we know the spot at which they cross the border with Guyana, Brazil. People in the community know. We know where they stay when they come to Guyana, both in Georgetown and those that head to Brazil through Lethem. We know who is providing the transportation services to take them from Lethem, from Georgetown through Linden to Lethem. We know that. But Felix, a former commissioner of police and now minister, says, bring the evidence, bring this evidence, these are anecdotes. Well, either Mr. Felix is not too bright, and I know him as a commissioner of police, and I know what he did and didn't do in the crime wave of 2002 to 2008. He may not be the shining penny in the class, but he's certainly crafty, and he certainly knows when he's talking like this that it's doublespeak, that it is doublespeak, and that there is another agenda at work, and he's an integral part of it. So Surinamese, Guyanese and Surinamese crossing at the current border, you will be prosecuted for legally entering if you don't go to an immigration officer. However, Haitians and Cubans who are going across the border to Brazil, no, they're going to meet their family in the diaspora. So, I leave you to think about those things. The fact that it's right under his nose makes one even greater, more suspicious. So then one has to ask, why are other nationals who have come into Guyana illegally or exiting illegally on the various borders, Venezuela, Suriname, and Brazil, are being charged and brought to court for illegal entry into Guyana, or exit, or overstaying? Then why isn't this friendly, liberal approach that once you're going to see your family in the diaspora, you can traverse through Guyana. We're a good transshipment point. We're just there to allow any and everybody to come along. Why is this not applicable to all nationalities coming into Guyana? Forget about CARICOM. As I said, it is the Lee opposition who first released the information of preferential treatment on the air side, that is the tarmac. So where the plane lands on the tarmac, we had evidence that the Haitians were given preferential treatment. Certain facilitators were meeting them right at the foot of the stairs and escorting them through immigration, etc., out to the buses. Before the Parliamentary Sectoral Committee on Foreign Affairs, when he was summoned before it and finally appeared after months of avoiding and changing the dates and delaying, he appeared on August the 9th, 2019. He denied this and said, bring the evidence. When it was pointed out that there's CCTV cameras in the airport all over the place, he could, as the minister and in charge of immigration and citizenship, he could look at those photographs, those camera, and see for himself what was going on and actually be able to identify who may be the persons involved in it. He said, no, bring the evidence, bring the evidence. How are we to access the CCTV surveillance cameras? So, but we believe that the Haitians, and Cubans in particular, are being exploited. And we should all, as Guyanese, be ashamed of that. The Haitians are particularly targeted for exploitation. We have evidence of the government providing false Guyana documents to non-nationals who are not eligible, which are being issued for illegal purposes, either in order to be registered in the house-to-house exercise so they can be put on the voters list, and a new identity to cross the border. We have evidence of persons also being given Guyanese citizenship who do not have the requirement of being domiciled in Guyana for 5 years. They will then be able to be put on the voters list once they get their Guyanese naturalization certificate. This is exploitation of vulnerable groups of people, in particular the Haitians, who are being smuggled in a huge operation with many actors, including members of the government. This aspect is what moves the issue of Haitians and Cubans from a human smuggling operation to a trafficking in persons operation. And I want to explain that a little bit more. Internationally, the term human smuggling or migrant smuggling is under a UN protocol that deals with the UN Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime and dealing with protocol against the smuggling of migrants by land, sea, and air. Human trafficking, in terms of human smuggling, most of it is voluntary. People pay someone to pass them through the various systems and so on, and it is basically voluntary. However, it becomes human trafficking when it is not voluntary, when there are conditions put onto it, such as working without pay, without being able to get your passport, to hold on to your passport, and that you are required to do other things in order to get safe passage through the country to wherever the destination is. And that is the point I'm making, that this has been a human smuggling operation, but because of the components to do with exploitation and other obligations that the Haitians in particular and others are being made to carry out, then it has moved from human smuggling at the international level to what is called human trafficking. Their free passage by the government to enter legally and leave illegally, while Felix and others deliberately know what is happening, implicates the government in their plan to pad the voters list, disenfranchise thousands of Guyanese, and of course, my dear friends, make thousands and thousands of dollars through this whole backtrack smuggling operation. People are being paid large amounts of money. When you listen to the bus drivers who are now talking after the exposure in the media, that yes, police along the way are taking as much as $200-300 US from the Haitian, from one Haitian on the bus, then it gives you an idea of the way in which the profiteering, the dollar, is being used to exploit Haitians. Shouldn't that make this government mad? Shouldn't that make Mr. Felix mad? that police and immigration officers and others are facilitating exploitation of migrants coming into our country. But maybe, as some say, the take goes higher up the line, the cut goes higher up the line. Over 8,000 Haitians for this year have entered, and 90% have not been recorded departing the country. The exploitation of the Haitians is what is the crux of the issue, not race, as Felix is trying to make it. And I am asking more Haitians who are experiencing this exploitation to feel free to speak to us, and this information will be treated confidentially, or anyone that is involved in this operation. How can you see other people being made to suffer? We look at the BBC and we see what is done to the migrants coming from North Africa, from the Syrians, from those coming from war-torn countries, from the Rohingya in Bangladesh. We see it. Can we not, as a people, have a heart? Do we have a government that is not prepared to have a heart for people who are being exploited? Because many people are profiteering, and it will reach their own goal of staying in government with a flawed list. We're asking all those involved in this operation, man at the smallest level, to not be part of this operation, to expose it. Because today it may be the Haitians, tomorrow it will be others. We know too that Haitians who wish to stay here in Guyana, here, and don't have the money to go on to Brazil, are being employed here at below minimum wages, with and without visas and work permits. This is also exploitation. Why isn't the Ministry of Labor concerned about this? Why isn't the Ministry of Social Protection concerned about this? I don't speak Creole, Haitian Creole or patois. My French is a little rusty. But I want to say a few words to any Haitians that may be listening. Je désire parler avec Haitian directement. N'aie pas peur. L'office de la chef de l'opposition dans le Parlement est ici. Et nous sommes ouverts pour vous aider. Nous sommes ouverts pour vous aider. S'il vous plaît. Call in, my dear friends. We have to ensure that we are ready for elections to save our nation and our children. I hope that you all have a blessed week. Until we meet again, right here on Matters of Public Importance, next Thursday, 12:30 to 1:30. And I know that there's a Muslim holiday next week, and I want to extend Eid Mubarak greetings to all our Muslim brothers and sisters, that as a country that has been a diverse religious country, diverse cultural, that we continue to uphold and celebrate our diversity and not be caught in the trap, being put in different boxes by those who wish to rule us unconstitutionally. And so, my dear friends, struggle we shall, and silent we shall not be. Silence is the greatest enemy to democracy. Silence makes those in power think they can get away with anything. Silence helps those who want more control and less democracy, those who want to move this country to police state. And at the elections, the people will make their voices and votes count again. And we in the People's Progressive Party civic government shall have to start all over again, as in 1992, to reconstruct, to put this economy back on a firm and stable footing, and restore the programs which help the poor and vulnerable and those at risk, and restore the independence of the judiciary and legislature from executive interference. Have a wonderful weekend. Don't drink and drive. Drive carefully, please. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye. Ta-ta.